October is going to be a really weird month for what GPU to recommend, but I do have some recommendations. Even though we have Intel Arc GPUs coming out on October 12th, and we have Nvidia's new 40 series coming out with the 4090 and the two 4080s. One of them's a 4070. Anyway, coming out this month again on October 12th, and we should be seeing at least one new AMD GPU coming out in November. I think there's still a lot of GPUs that I can safely recommend at this time. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the recommendations, and I'm gonna start out with okay, there's going to be a lot of AMD recommendations here just simply due to price to performance right now, and I'm not doing this just to be an AMD fanboy, anything like that. My current GPU I use is an RTX 3080. I would recommend Nvidia GPUs if they made sense price to performance wise. And I do want to say that some people should consider an Nvidia GPU, even at these price points. Certain productivity apps are programmed better to work on Nvidia. Live streaming, the encoders do look a little bit better on Nvidia GPUs at those low bit rates, and there is a better reputation for driver stability from Nvidia. However, with that being said, the RTX 3050 costs $285 right now, and that's the bottom end of Nvidia's 3000 series lineup. The RX 6650 XT from AMD also currently has its cheapest model available for $285. And I don't have a 6650 XT, I have a 6600 XT for my benchmarking, and I can show you some comparisons here. And the RX 6650 XT absolutely crushes the RTX 3050, and they cost the same price. It is not even close, and I just cannot recommend an RTX 3050 over the 6650 XT. It's just so much better. Now, like I said, there are reasons why you might consider buying an Nvidia GPU, and if that's the case, well, you could go a couple of options. One thing is the RTX 2060 is still being sold new by Nvidia. I think that was one of the things they kept running from the 2000 series. And by the way, I'm talking about new GPUs in this video. I'm not talking about the used market. There are some very interesting deals on the used market right now, so that is certainly another way to go. But anyway, the RTX 2060 actually costs less than an RTX 3050 right now. It does have 2 GB less VRAM, but in most games it performs as good or more often better than the RTX 3050. And it costs less. It still has the better NVIDIA live streaming encoder, and it'll still be, you know, have the apps, productivity apps that are optimized for NVIDIA will still have those advantages. So if you're looking for a value-oriented, brand new NVIDIA GPU, the RTX 2060 to me makes a lot more sense than the 3050, despite 2 GB less VRAM, and it does draw some more power. It is a little bit less power efficient. Now, I'll also say that at that same price, you can get the RX 6600 non-XT from AMD. It's about $240 on the cheapest models right now. And I think in general, it does perform a little bit better than the 2060, and it does have that 8 GB of VRAM. But if you're willing to go AMD and you're around this price point, I really do think jumping up to that 6650 XT does make a lot of sense. At $285, this is now a very, very solid performer, and I think it's offering the best price to performance for anybody looking for a solid 1080p GPU right now. And if you're thinking the NVIDIA ray tracing advantage, I just don't think that at this price point, considering what NVIDIA is offering at this price point is a 3050 or a 2060, the ray tracing performance just isn't there. I just don't think most people would use it because your frame rates will be low enough that it's not that worthwhile, or you'll be having to use DLSS extremely aggressively or only turn on a few very small ray tracing effects that don't have that meaningful of an impact to the overall image quality. So, like I said, there are reasons to buy the NVIDIA GPU, but I think at this price point, ray tracing isn't really one of them, and the 6650 XT is the better deal here. It's actually currently cost less than the 6600 XT, which it is the slight improvement on, but the 6600 XT models seem to be going for around $310. Now, if we do want to step up in price, or you wanted to consider the next NVIDIA GPU, the next NVIDIA GPU available, the cheapest one I see for the RTX 3060 is $370. The $370 price point is hard to sell considering that the 6650 XT and the 6600 XT are giving you very similar rasterized performance, albeit with less VRAM and, you know, again, the Nvidia features, the better, you know, productivity support. I've already gone over this. I don't need to repeat it. There are reasons that Nvidia does charge a premium, but that's an almost $100 premium when you're looking at typical pricing on these GPUs. And percentage-wise at this price point, that's massive. And currently, there are RX 6700 XTs available starting at $390. And $390 for the 6700 XT versus spending only slightly less to get that to get the RTX 3060, the 6700 XT matches it for 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and other than in ray tracing, it just absolutely demolishes it in terms of performance. And DLSS would oftentimes be needed just to catch up to the performance of the 6700 XT. But AMD has improved FSR with FSR 2.0 and even 2.1 out now, and their game support list growing. I do still think DLSS is better than FSR 2.0 and 2.1, and its game support list is better. But like I said, the 6700 XT has such a performance advantage that it just seems like the card to go with. The next step up from Nvidia is the RTX 3060 Ti, but those seem to be coming in at $450 for the absolute cheapest models, which is, like I said, paying a significant premium over that 6700 XT. However, the 3060 Ti, like I said, will have those NVIDIA advantages in productivity apps, live streaming, encoder, and general driver stability reputation. It does have a little bit less VRAM, but I don't think at the kinds of resolutions and settings you'd be using on a 3060 Ti that's going to be that big of a deal. 3060 Ti and 6700 XT are going to be very fast 1080p cards, and at 1440p they will get the job done. But in the most demanding games, you would turn down graphics settings a little bit anyway, which would help rein in the VRAM a bit as well. Now, if you're going past this point, I really think it makes sense to actually go up to the 6800 XT as your next choice, because we started to see 6800 XTs come down to $550. And that's absolutely nuts, because the RTX 3070 is still $500 for the absolute cheapest model. So you're only talking a 10% increase in price to get yourself a 6800 XT, which against a 3070, it has double the VRAM and significantly faster performance. And I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer to spend that little bit extra. The 3070 Ti from Nvidia is $610 for the absolute cheapest models right now, and it's actually slower than a 6800 XT pretty significantly at everything except for ray tracing. And again, still only has the 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I just really think the 6800 XT is offering a better value there. Now, the RX 6800 non-XT from AMD can be had for around $510 now, which is a significant discount on the cheapest models. And again, at that price, the 3070 non-Ti and even the Ti version start to be a little bit questionable. So I know I'm sounding like I'm just recommending AMD. Price to performance wise, I just think they're offering significantly better performance. Now, if you can compare the $510 6800 versus the $550 6800 XT, I probably would pay a little bit more for that XT version. Now, if you went up to the 6900 XT from AMD, their prices have been coming down. They've been coming down into like $670. I've even seen them as low as like $630, but that sold out really fast. The problem is the 6900 XT, I don't actually have one, but if I pop over to a, kind of relative performance chart type of thing over here at Tech Power Up, in general, the 6900 XT is only about 10% or so faster than a 6800 XT. Now, specific models and in specific games, it could be a little bit different. But the point is, I generally think that the 6800 XT offers significantly better value, so I don't think it makes any sense going past that point, given the price differences that you're still seeing available. So I think the 6800 XT is a fantastic buy right now, but I would not go past that on the AMD side. Now, if you're wanting to buy higher end performance, now the RTX 3080 is still offering significantly better than the deals than the 3090 versions, which can still go up to almost in the $900 to $1,000 range. And again, the relative performance between 3080s, 3080 12 gigabytes are a little bit faster than that. 3080 Ti is a few percent faster than a 3080 12 gigabyte, and then the 3090 is only a few percent faster than a 3080 Ti. 3090 Ti is only about 10% faster than a 3090. I mean, the point is that the 3080 is where you get the best price to performance in that stack. And going past that point, I don't think makes any sense right now. At all. Now, does a 3080 still make any sense to buy? Well, if you're talking for rasterized gaming, in other words, not ray traced, I think the 6800 XT is a much better deal at $550 compared to around $720 to $750 for the cheapest 3080s. However, I do think that the 3080 is strong enough at ray tracing with a little bit of DLSS, which looks pretty good at 1440p, that if you're looking for a 1440p ray tracing card, the 3080, especially the 12 gigabyte version, if you can find it for not much more money than the 10 gigabyte version, does still make a lot of sense. Like I said, if you don't care about the ray tracing or the other Nvidia features, I think the 6800 XT is a better deal, but I think this is where ray tracing starts to be a lot more relevant, is 1440p ray tracing on a 3080 or better. Now, how do the new graphics cards that are coming out play into this whole comparison? And does buying a 3080 for this $700-ish to $700 to $750 price point still make any sort of sense? Well, all we can go off of is what Nvidia has told us about their new GPUs, but they've intentionally very clearly priced them with not undercutting the 30 series in mind. They have designed the price and performance to scale with current 30 series pricing and to not drive its price down, at least for the next few months. So I'm sure that eventually, especially as AMD's full lineup is out and the 30 series stocks does start to dwindle, we probably will see the price creep down. But I think that is going to take many, many months, and you might not want to wait that long on your GPU upgrade. So let's talk about the new 4000 series and the big upgrades. The RTX 4090 is by far the most interesting of this stack, but Nvidia's performance claims trying to show off like these 2 to 4 times performance gains are very misleading. I've done videos on this topic. This is always not only using ray tracing and DLSS, but it's using DLSS frame generation, which is admittedly locked to the 4000 series card. So that is a feature that they have that others don't. But those frames are not created equally with normal frames. They don't look as good, and they do increase latency when compared to using DLSS without frame generation with NVIDIA Reflex. And again, I've done other videos on this whole topic. The point is, those graphs are a bit misleading. In NVIDIA's own graphs, you have to dig around a bit, but they have released some performance figures, again, from NVIDIA themselves, where we can see games that don't feature DLSS or the frame generation technology, and we can get a much better idea for what to expect from the 4000 series. In games like Resident Evil Village, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and The Division 2, I think we're seeing what is going to be much more normal to see. We see the RTX 3090 Ti, in gray here. Let me slide myself completely out of the way. We see the 4080 12 gigabyte version, which is significantly worse than a 4080 16 gigabyte version and probably should have been named a 3070 or 3070 Ti, but they knew people would cry if they called it that and charged $900. And a 4080 16 gigabyte, again, coming in at $1,200, and the 4090 coming in at $1,600. Now, look at the price to performance and against the 3090 Ti. It's looking like the 4080 12 gigabyte by NVIDIA's own graphs is going to only sometimes tie and often lose against a 3090 Ti unless it's using the new frame generation technology, which, like I said, isn't real normal frames, so those aren't all created equal, right? Okay. Now, the 4090 is still offering significantly better performance than anything we currently have on the market. So it's looking like something like 50, 60, or 70% performance when we're comparing apples to apples performance here. And so that's simply a lot better than anything we currently have available. So I think if you are in the absolute high-end market, you should buy yourself a 4090. If value is irrelevant to you, you want to buy the best of the best, get yourself a 4090 when they try to launch, because I think the prices will eventually come down, but it'll take a long time. If you're thinking about should you wait for the AMD competition, maybe if you prefer AMD, I think they will be launching their new card in November, and it probably will be their high-end card. Do I think it can compete with the 4090? Probably not in terms of features. I don't think they'll have anything like the frame generation technology. And while I expect them to have significantly better ray tracing performance, I would be shocked if it catches up to the 4000 series like the 4090 in terms of ray tracing performance. I just think they have too much of a deficit to overcome. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong about that, but I don't expect it. Now, in terms of straight up rasterized performance, could they beat a 3090 Ti by 50 to 70%? In rasterized performance, I think so. I think that's very possible, and I do think they would price themselves lower than the 4090 unless they're just outright beating it badly at everything besides ray tracing. Now, why would that be possible? AMD themselves have claimed a 50% performance per watt uplift from their RDNA 3 architecture. Now, performance per watt is a difficult thing to go off of because there's an efficiency curve and it's not linear. But if you took a relative performance chart here, a 6900 XT, gaming at 4K at 1440p or 1080p, it would be much closer and maybe even match a 3090. At 4K, it's often a little bit behind a 3090, but it's very close. And maybe, 10 to 20% depending on the game behind a 3090 Ti. But if you add a 50%, let's say same wattage and scaled it up 50%, then we would be, maybe beating a 3090 Ti by 40%, something like that. That wouldn't be completely unreasonable. And AMD has also hinted that they will drive up their power consumption. Now, that doesn't scale linearly with the performance as you go off your efficiency curve into the deep end, right? But the point is, if they did bump up their power consumption 100 watts, and get that 50% performance per watt, which would probably not actually be that efficient if you did bump up the performance per watt. But the point is, if they did get, a 60 to 70% performance jump over a 6900 XT, or maybe even more if they drive the power up really high, something like that, I do think competing with the 4090 is actually completely reasonable given what AMD has claimed, but we don't have a lot of performance leaks or anything like that from the AMD camp this time around at this point in time. Hopefully more to come soon. But like I said, I really don't think it'll beat a 4090 by much if it does, and probably not at all in ray tracing or your other feature set. And I think at this point, you're not really looking at value, you're just looking at wanting to buy the best of the best, and Nvidia does have a reputation of being the best of the best for a reason. It would be really cool to see AMD change that to shake things up a bit, maybe drive prices down, but we'll see what happens. I think if you're looking for the best of the best, buying the 4090, look at reviews if you can first, but you're probably there. Now, do the 4080 or either version of it make any sense right now to consider? Well, 4080 12GB coming in at $900, and then losing to a 3090 Ti in some cases, and sometimes tying it, and only beating it with the new frame generation technology. Well, if we once again look at pricing, an RTX 3080, I guess I was already on it, now I'm typing it in again. An RTX 3080, 12GB comes in at $740. That is significantly less than the 4080 12GB. It won't have the new frame generation technology, and it's probably a little bit slower, but look at the relative performance. A 3080 is not all that much slower than a 3090 or a 3090 Ti. A 3090 Ti, for example, is only about 20% faster. The 3080 12GB is actually closer to a 3080 Ti. It's not quite a 3080 Ti, but if we use that as a stand-in here, it's a 10% jump to a 3090 Ti. You see what I'm saying? So the point is, I think the 4080 12GB is going to be a little bit better than a 3080 Ti or 3080 12GB, but not that noticeably to make the $900 price point all that appealing. I think that buying a 3080 now could make sense. It could. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying it could, and that was the whole point. That's why Nvidia selected these prices. They specifically selected them so that you don't skip buying the 3080. They make the 3080 still make sense price to performance wise when compared to the 4080 class cards. Now the 4080 16GB is in a weird position because it's only a little bit better than what you could get from a 3090 right now. And the 3090 right now already costs less, and the 3080 is pretty close. So to me right now, based on what we see, the 4080 16GB, well, it's way better than the 4080 12GB. If it's $1,200 and up, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. If you're already spending $1,200, maybe just buy the 4090 for significantly better performance, or spend significantly less and get something like a 3080 12GB if you're into the ray tracing features. If you're not that into ray tracing and you're playing at 1440p, spend $550 on a 6800 XT right now, you know? Anyway, this video is getting really long. I know this is a complicated situation, and did I just completely ignore Intel? Yeah, because I watched the reviews. Anyway, Intel is competing at the with the RX 6650 XT. The 6650 XT is going to have more reliable drivers and software than the Intel Arc GPUs. And in a few games, it might lose to an A770, but in most games, it's going to be better. In some games, it's going to be a lot better. And the Intel Arc GPUs are going to have stability issues, and I just don't recommend beta testing it for them. I hope some people do, because I want Intel to stay in the game. But I just don't think they make sense. The 6650 XT on average is going to be significantly faster and less expensive than an A770, cost similar to an A750, and be significantly faster. I guess if you're really into, you really want the AV1 encoding and you really want to just buy it for that, I mean, that's something, but I'm focusing on gaming performance here. So anyway, that's what I think you should buy in October. Like I said, 6650 XT I think makes the most sense for the most people. If you do want to step up from there, the 6700 XT and 6800 XT offer significantly better value than their Nvidia competitors. And then the 3080 12GB still makes sense for a 1440p ray tracing focused build because Nvidia is not going to be giving us much better value anytime soon. And the 4090 will make sense for the people who just want to buy the best of the best of the best, regardless of price. I hope all of you have an excellent day.